Alright, this will be the first discussion video on the Azeroth Weather channel, so I thought I would start it light. And the first topic will be, why do people hate BfA so much? The general opinion of the game is kind of negative right now, and I want to see exactly why, because most of the things I see is just general rabble-rousing. I don't think that's the right word for it. Just people complaining excessively about really minor things, trying to make it seem like it's a much bigger deal. But the thing is, there are legitimately big things to complain about the game with. So let me go over what I think are some of the big ones. First up, we have, you get weaker as you level up. I have a level 111 Demon Hunter that I have their experience locked so that I can farm island expeditions on him, and it is much quicker to farm an island expedition on that level 111 Demon Hunter than it is to farm it on my heroic old deer geared priest. The damage isn't even close to comparable. The Demon Hunter is just far better. And that's a pretty negative aspect of the game. One that has kind of been the case for the past couple of expansions, but, just because it's kind of standard now doesn't mean it should be. Up until Mist of Pandaria, classes just got, I wouldn't say up until Mist of Pandaria, even in Cataclysm, once you hit level 81, your character just got super weak. But then again, that was a point of super secondary stat gear inflation to the point where people were capping out on certain stats. The game has never really gone that bad ever since. And this is why they do like a hard reset every expansion. Especially if you keep feeling stronger and stronger with every new expansion, you'll just get to ludicrous levels. So I can understand from like a healthy gameplay point of view, balancing that out so you don't get too crazy strong and become godlike beings. By the time of WoW's 20th expansion, you just look at something and it explodes. You have to reset it eventually. So getting weaker as you level up makes sense, but it really shouldn't be this bad. Which kind of goes on to this next point. You are literally just a lesser version of your Legion self. Like, Azerite traits and gear and everything would probably have been fine if they were introduced before artifacts and Legion legendaries. Because the Azerite gear is literally just a lesser version of that. Like, a more balanced version of it. Because some of the artifacts and Legion legendaries were kind of ridiculous. Well, not really the artifacts themselves. The classes were balanced around the artifacts. It was some of those Legion legendaries that were crazy strong. So they incorporated some of the artifact traits and some of the legendary items into talent points you could take. Which doesn't feel good because that's not the same as keeping it. Keeping it would mean they gave it to your class baseline. Incorporated into a talent means you have to give up one of your other talents in order to take something that you got on top of everything else. You're already getting weaker as you level up because they have to do a soft reset every expansion. But this is kind of overkill on that front. You shouldn't be a much weaker version of yourself at max level than you were in the previous expansion as well. And this next point, I only have like 3 of them on this, of like major points why people might not like the game as much anymore. The gutting of customization. Gems, enchants, belt buckles, tailor/scribe enchants, and glyphs. It used to be there were so many different things you could do to your gear before a raid started. Every single major piece of gear had like 1 to 3 sockets on it. You had to match your gem sockets in order to activate your meta gem. More than half of your pieces of gear needed enchants, and these enchants were gathered from different professions. Mostly from enchanting, but you also got belt buckles from blacksmith, and you also got like pant enchants from either tailors or leather workers, and like helm or shoulder enchants from scribes, and then of course there were glyphs to complement everything else. There was much more customization of your character in the old days. And the reason they got rid of a lot of this was for like ease of access. They want people to be able to jump into the gear right away without having to jump through too many hoops and whistles. Which makes sense. Like, I'm sure a lot of people who play this game, or have been playing it for a long time, or the kinds of people who go to forums and stuff and post about the game, they're the kinds of people who already know everything about WoW and what to do. And it's kind of hard for them to believe that there's people who come back to the game after a few years, or who are even starting the game fresh. As someone who makes videos about the game, I know for a fact there are tons of new players starting the game, or people who are just returning after taking a long break, who are completely lost with what to do. So, eliminating barriers to entry makes sense for people to get into the good point of the games, raiding or PvP. I personally think they just kind of went overboard with trying to make it as accessible as possible. Especially since I myself loved professions and selling stuff, and with much less customization needed for your character, you can't really sell gems or enchants like you used to, and that's what I really miss about the game. That's one of the biggest things I wish they would change, is if they added more gem slots and more enchants. Because that was a good moneymaker. I don't really care about, gems and enchants for my own gear and everything, because I always had those, so it wasn't an issue. The big thing was other people needing it and not having those professions, so they had to buy it off the auction house. Now, on to the good parts about the game. The raids are good. The dungeons are good. And from what I heard, PvP is actually fine for the most part. PvP in WoW is never good. It's never perfect. There's always some kind of glaring issue with it. But they're not complaining about it anywhere near as much as they used to complain, like back in Warlords of Draenor. PvP was a hot topic of discussion back then, because everyone hated it. And I don't really know much about Legion, but from what I heard people talking about PvP and BfA, nothing overly negative, which is a good sign. So, the main selling points, the game mechanics themselves are great, and the new raid that's coming up, I've seen PTR footage of it, and pretty much everyone who's tested it has said the raid is great, and from what I've seen, it looks awesome, and I can't wait to try it out. Like, the raids in WoW have always been the best part about it. Everyone who complains about it, they at least begrudgingly also accept that the raids themselves are good. And raids are a big selling point to the game of people who play it for longer than the first month of the expansion. Some of the classes are fine. Like, one of the big problems people have with the game is that a lot of the classes were completely gutted or neutered or just don't work after the GCD change. But some of them are okay. Like, personally, my class, the Disc Priest, good state. Really good. Kind of a little bit too good. Disc Priests are getting a whole bunch of nerfs in the next patch for being too good at what they do. For being too good at rewarding high skill caps. So, for some classes, one of the big issues of all of the classes being terrible is not true. But I guess that's true for some of them, and people who complain about their classes complain louder. So it might seem like all of the classes are terrible, because there are definitely a handful of classes that aren't very good right now, so they complain the loudest. And people who have a good class, like my Disc Priests, generally don't say much because they want Blizzard to kind of ignore it because it's doing good. We don't need any changes. Every single change of the Disc Priest on the PTR is a nerf. So, I'm not looking forward to that. Whereas other classes are very much looking forward to all of the buffs and changes they're getting. And since your class is basically just a lesser version of itself from its Legion part, I can understand why a lot of the classes just feel gutted and everything. My Disc Priests didn't really lose much. They kind of changed things around, and the only thing I'm noticeably missing is my artifact weapon, which is like a huge single target burst, which was super good for the playstyle. It's not that big of a deal. In fact, that kind of playstyle wasn't really that fun. So with them removing that, it kind of made healing a little bit better. But that's definitely not the case for a lot of other classes. I'm just saying, the goods are some classes are perfectly fine and playable and play very well. But there's also a handful of classes that don't, and also a lot that are just kind of mediocre. And also, stuff in the game from before BfA that just got stuff added to it, like more pet battles and more mounts. Those are always the great things of new expansions, is just more content for people who like to collect stuff. Now, on to the discussion. What could be changed to make the game better? Well, besides making Azerite gear more meaningful, like Legion legendaries, I'd say adding player housing would be a big one. Because you see, one of the main things people collect is pets, mounts, and gold. And I guess transmog too. I keep forgetting, there's other things people collect that I don't personally. Okay, so what is it? It's pets, mounts, gold, transmog, and I don't think there's a fifth thing. Toys? Do people really collect toys that much? I'm sure they do. Like, I'll get a toy if it's convenient, or if it's for an achievement. I guess toys as well. So there's already like 5 things people collect. I personally only go for like 2 of them, gold and pets, because they kind of feed into each other. But if they added player housing, that would add a completely, like, a 6th thing for people to collect. And right now, the most popular thing people collect are mounts, because those are useful. A house, not very useful unless it's kind of like the garrison, where I'll sometimes still go back to my garrison because it has its own auction house. And if they had ways to get, like, a new couch by running an old raid, I'd definitely go do that, if I like that couch enough. It would be a way to add more cosmetic options to the game for people to farm. And it would be a new one, since the last time they added a new cosmetic thing for people to go out and collect was in Mista Pandaria with pet battles. And while people complain about pet battles, lots of people, it's the popular opinion that most people don't like pet battles. Internally, from like all the things Blizzard have said, pet battles were a huge success. People love to collect them. The hate circle jerk for pet battles is not as big as it might seem. And adding player housing just seems like a next logical choice because it's in a lot of other MMOs. Speaking of other MMOs, adding different roles for mounts. Like from what I heard, I think in Guild Wars 2, they have this system where their mounts do different things. Like some of the mounts can jump really high. One of the mounts can't steer very well, but it goes faster than other mounts. Because it's basically like a ball that you roll on. Blizzard kind of has this. They have some mounts that can walk on water. They have some mounts that allow you to pick herbs. And they have like literally one mount that you can use at level 1. A good mount anyway. You can technically use the riding turtle level 1 as well. Basically, more variety in what mounts can do. Not even like super useful things like being able to pick herbs while using it. But maybe one of the mounts gives you the Demon Hunter double jump ability or something like that. I think that would add another really great reason for people to collect different types of mounts. If they could do fun things that don't really impact the gameplay too much. Although I can't really think of what they would do to a mount that could impact the gameplay that much. After all, they already have the mount that lets you herb while in it. And besides that, I have other things listed here. I'm kind of just like, I have bullet points that I'm trying to adjust. And I have pet battles written here. How could pet battles be changed? Pet battles are already great. I think it's because they announced they're going to add some changes to pet battles to make the PvP system better. Which I think is a good change, but I don't know why I wrote that down here. That's more of a change they're already planning to do. And then I have Gearfront, give back customization for gold makers, not really for people who actually, want to raid, because getting rid of all that customization just made getting into raids easier and allows you to actually use gear as soon as you get it. It's accomplished its goal of what Blizzard wanted it to do. But there is also a little bit of fun in having that kind of customization, even if it really doesn't do much. And I think one of the big ones that they could add to make a big change to one of the biggest parts of the game is add in some form of rewards for leveling up. People like stupid bullshit, BS. Ooh, we gotta keep this PG. Like, the old school talent system was a problem for max level players. Honestly, the new talent system where you just pick one of 3 for each row works perfectly fine. It's a great system for max level raiding and endgame content. For leveling up, though, it's not so good when you have 120 levels, and you can only get one every 15, and then you just stop getting them at 100, I think? Or is it 110? I don't remember. They've already kind of tried to do this by giving you lesser abilities when you level up, and they'll, quote, rank up when you get to higher levels to start doing what they're supposed to do. More of that would honestly be pretty good. Even if it's just you're using a neutered ability at an early level, and then as you level up, it gets better. Anyways, some kind of dopamine reward every time you leveled up, rather than just the thing that you leveled up now. Now the mobs you're fighting are going to scale to your level, so you're not actually going to feel stronger. It'd be nice if they gave players, like, a talent tree while they're leveling up, which would then convert to the endgame talent tree once they hit max level. A stupid, meaningless reward that would make leveling up fun again. Or, some other thing. That's just one of my suggestions. I'm sure Blizzard could think of something else. I think they said in some interviews that they are looking into the problem, and they're aware it's a problem, but I can't see them actually changing it this expansion, since that seems like a huge overhaul. But leveling is such a major part of the game that they really do need to do something about that. Alright, so that's the end of the discussion. I talked about the major reasons why people don't like the game. There's also a million other little reasons that people like to complain very loudly about that I didn't really talk about, because I think I covered the big points. The important ones. As well as giving some opinions on the opposite side, where it's honestly, there are still good parts about the game. Although on the part about what could be changed, I just kind of wrote down random things. And this is where the discussion comes in. What do you think could be changed or added to the game to make it better? And in the next discussion video, I'll go over choice comments and talk about them, whether I agree or disagree, and then I'll go on to the next discussion. So each discussion video from here on out will be addressing comments from the last discussion and then starting a new one.